Hi, my name is Angie. So I'm an Android developer relations engineer for Google. So how many of you are Android native developers? 1, 2, 3. Or anyone have done development in Android native? Maybe not in production. Okay. We have a handful. Yeah, so hopefully, I don't know. Hopefully, maybe we have like some cool stuff I'm gonna talk about in Android, and maybe this could be a good chance for you to see what's in Android and persuade you to try things out in Android. So okay, this is the way that I'm gonna structure my talk. So for the next 20 or 30 minutes, I'm going to do a bit of recap of Android I/O announcements. So a lot of features that we have announced for I/O this year, including Android 13, Jetpack Compose, large screen, wearables. So a lot of cool stuff coming up. So it's quite a big range of topics. And then for the last 15 minutes, I can open the floor for any questions that you want to ask regarding Android, Google, or anything. You can ask anything. I don't say that I can answer everything, but yeah, let's see how it goes. Sure. Thank you. Yeah, so we have things to give out as well. So please stay tuned. I know this is after lunch, and maybe some of you are a bit like still having food coma, but hopefully there'll be. I'll ask some questions to make sure that everyone's still awake for the whole session. So anyways, let's start. So Android 13. First of all, how many of you here are using Android phones or Android devices? Okay, only about half. Maybe Android TV, wearables, tablets. Yep, okay. So Android 13. So there are a lot of features that we roll out in Android 13. I'm going to just discuss a small set of features that I thought would be interesting to discuss. And hopefully we can have discussions on those. In Android 13 in general, we really focus a lot on privacy, security, extension of power, and performance for the devices. So as of right now, Android 13 is currently in beta 3. So it means that the API contracts are currently stable and unchanging. And if you want to start adopting Android 13 APIs, you should feel safe that it is stable enough. And there is very rare chance that the contract's going to change from now to the stable version. So the first interesting update that we have in Android 13 is notification permission. So we got the feedback from our users that notification overloads, or like if you see an app that send a lot of notifications, is one of the leading reasons why a lot of our users are very reluctant to install apps. So in Android 13, we actually add this new notification permission. So for all newly installed apps, irrespective of target SDK, the users are going to need to grant a runtime permission before they can actually send notifications for applications. So it means that if you have apps right now in public and the user starts installing Android 13, they will get the first time that they come back to the app itself, they will get asked if they want this application to send notification or not. So for apps targeting SDK 32 and lower, the system will automatically prompt for this user permission. And if the user tabs don't allow, your app is actually restricted from sending notification, and the user isn't prompted again until they uninstall or reinstall your app, or they go directly to the settings and grant that permission. So this is where we really recommend for you to actually follow the UX best practices in asking users permission, because a lot of the times users have give us this feedback of they really want more control over their apps, more justification of why they need to give certain permission, because we found that our users really value the privacy that they have in their phones. So really follow the best practice that ask for those permission justification at the moment where you actually need those permissions, so that you can give clarity and give your user a bit more feeling safety and secure in using their apps, that you as a app developer are care about preserving their privacy and asking just enough permission that you need for your apps to work. So, and another thing that's also interesting is foreground service notifications. So previously, the foreground service notifications, a lot of them are not dismissible. So this is a very highly requested features that in Android 13, we are going to allow foreground service notifications to be dismissible. And this means that because now it is dismissible, we need to have a task manager to actually allow users to know that even if you dismiss the notification, maybe the users might not realize that the foreground service is actually still running. So you need to go to those task manager to check whether there is apps that is running foreground services. And the thing is, if the user remove the foreground services from the task manager, it will automatically remove the application from memory. It will stop if it's a like media playback foreground services, for example. So I guess since many of you might not be familiar with Android, like foreground services are things that is running in the foreground, such as like if you run like media, like videos, like for example, you are running YouTube or YouTube music, things that media playable, or maybe you're running health apps. Like let's say you are actually running and like you're tracking your steps and stuff. So those media, media or like for example health, that those two are the two common use cases for foreground services. Now in Android 13, if the user dismiss the notification, you can still see the apps in Task Manager. But if the user decide to stop the Task Manager, it will stop the media playback, it will stop the service, and it will also stop the associated notification as well. And your app will get reason user requested notification that this is the reason why your foreground services has been terminated. Another very interesting update that we have from Android platform itself, because now our focus in Android is to make sure that application preserve a lot of users' privacy by limiting the amount of permission that an application have, is photo picker. So previously, when you build an Android application, for example, for you to get a permission to access on a user's like photos, videos, for example, you need to ask for like permission data specifically for like media permission, right? So in Photo Picker, what we are going to do is you don't need to ask users for those permissions, because Photo Picker itself is actually an Android systems capability. So your app doesn't need to ask for the permissions, but you can simply request from the library for Photo Picker to be launched. And this Photo Picker will be basically uniform across all apps, because this is a feature from the Android system itself. And it will run on runtime permission. You can have, it will be available in Android 13 beta, but we will be released using Google Play Systems update. So you don't need to worry about updating this, because it gets updated directly from Google Play Systems. And this will also be backported to Android 11 and Android 12. So even for those users who's using Android 11, Android 12, you can improve their permission capability through just using Photo Picker. And then this Photo Picker will also be extended for things like Google Photos and Google other cloud media providers as well. So you don't need to ask for permissions, and we will give this capability of accessing media to the system itself. So using the Photo Picker, basically it's very simple. It's less than 5 lines of code. It is well integrated in your app UX, so you don't require any permission. And hence, like you just need to use the API and don't need to worry about asking user permission and potentially getting rejected also from the user permission request. Another thing that I'm also super excited about is Android 13 will introduce this predictive back gesture. So if you see from the picture here, what it's going to look like is now when you're in Android, sometimes when you do a lot of back, you don't know whether you're going to go out of the app or not. So sometimes you are in the app and suddenly, oh, you are not in the app anymore. So what we are going to do is we are going to use this thing called predictive back gesture. So what will happen is if your app implement this API, you'll get the system animation there. So there, yeah. So basically, it will give you give the user kind of anticipation, like, oh, if you do a back now, you're actually going back to the system and out of the app. So it will give your user a better UX experience. But in order to do that, you're going to need to change a little bit of API on how you are handling your back system. So for Android 13, what it's still sort of like an opt-in methodology. So for if you want to implement that for your apps, you just need to opt in for Android 13 through the app manifest. Put the enable on back info core to true. And then you're using the listener basically to change the on back listener to on back info callback. That's to basically you use that listener to tell the system on whether you are handling the back, or if you don't handle those particular back, it means that the system is going to handle it, and the system will then display the animation, the prediction that it's going to go back to the system. So for Android 13, it's still like an opt-in mechanism. But note that for Android 14, this legacy behavior of don't have this animation predictive back button will be entirely replaced by the ahead of time approach that we have here in the new listener. So I would really recommend for you to try this out in your app for Android 13, because this is eventually the new world that we are going to move towards for the back experience in Android. And this also means that, in short, I would really recommend for you, even though it's not a compulsory thing in Android 13, to start trying it, because in Android 14, it's going to be an opt-out instead of an opt-in method. So one other interesting thing in Android 13 feature that I think is especially relevant in our region, because like in our region, a lot of people speak multiple languages. So this thing is called like per app local preferences. So previously, app usually depends on the system language in order for you to determine the locale of your app. So now the new feature is you're able to set locale per applications. So in your application, you can set your own locale. So for example, if you're more comfortable for your messaging app to be in your own mother tongue, you can set that in your own mother tongue without changing your whole application language. Yeah, so just a brief summary of, so there are like a lot of other Android 13 features that I wouldn't have time to go one by one. So these are some of the behavior changes that would be most prominent for Android 13. So without targeting Android 13, there is the FJS Task Manager that I've talked about. There is improved prefetch job handling, battery resource utilization, the runtime notification permission that I talked in the very beginning as well. So that would be affected even though you are not targeting specifically for Android 13 apps. And then media control derived from playback state, and in-app language picker that would be available even without Android 13. And then for apps, if you are developing apps that's specifically targeting for Android 13 and above, it will be, you have nil Wi-Fi runtime permission that is changing. So it used to be for Wi-Fi permission, you are using nearby devices. So now there is a specific Wi-Fi permission for it. And then there will be also granular media permission. So last time the permission is one permission for all types of media. Now we are changing it into very specific media permission. So for example, there is a video permission, there is image permission. So this media permission would be more granular. And this is also where we would really recommend you to use the photo picker API instead, because the photo picker API will not require you to ask permission any permission from your users at all. And then for targeting Android 13, there is also background body sensors permission and the intent filters. Like maybe a lot of you do a lot of deep linking from one app to another. So we will be stricter in terms of intent permission. Now the intent filters will block any non-matching intents. So this is where for Android 13, we are really focused on especially like performance, privacy, and battery resource management. So that's the first part of my talk, which is on Android 13. So for more detailed information, I would really recommend you to check out our DAC website /13. If you want to know about what are the exact details of the various changes, how to try out like different APIs, how to flash a test device if you are like running different kind of tests, to check out whether your current app is compatible for Android 13. So you can go to this site and check out different types of ways to do that. So the next topic is Jetpack Compose. This is basically my favorite topic for now. How many of you have heard of Jetpack Compose before? Heard? Okay, good enough. So I see some Flutter people have heard of this Jetpack Compose. Yeah, so Jetpack Compose is basically a new way of developing UI in Android. So if you have worked with Android before, if you've kind of built maybe just a test app before, maybe you're familiar with the view system. So basically you have an XML file that is describing how your layout would look like. So in the Compose system, we don't do that anymore. We are basically removing the whole XML layers, and everything will be moved into the Kotlin layers. And basically, the Jetpack Compose system is a new declarative way of developing UI. By the way, any chance we can increase the temperature?
Increase the temperature. It's too cold.
It's too cold. Yeah, so Jetpack Compose has been our top priority in terms of the Android development for this year from our team. And we have heard from a lot of developers who have worked with Jetpack Compose, whether in their production app, whether in just trying it out, that they find it very easy to learn, very easy to adopt, very intuitive, and it makes their work more productive. So we really feel that this is the right direction to go in terms of developing more of it, developing more API to support different kind of use case, improving the performance, giving more resources for trainings. And basically, this is sort of the future of UI development for Android. So Compose itself has been stable since July last year, and we are launching with a full set of UI components that will help you to build the UI in a more modern and declarative way. So for the Android for 2022 kind of scope, we launched with Compose 1.2. And one of the big features that we launched with is downloadable fonts. This is a feature that was already available in the View system. But now in Android, in Compose 1.2, we are also launching this as well in Compose, because we think this is a really important feature for development, especially for enterprise applications, because fonts really shows how your branding works at its best. And with downloadable fonts, you can also take advantage of things like font caches and dynamic font resolutions. The next thing that we're also working hard in is on nested scoring interop. So it's interoperability with like View system and Compose systems, because we understand that like companies have invested for a lot of years in the View system, and for many there might be a lot of times where they work with both systems while migrating from the View systems to the new Compose world. So we understand the need of making sure the interoperability between the View system and the Compose system would still be a good experience for developers. So we are progressively integrating embedding scrolling composable in coordinator layouts so that it's become much smoother. And things like collapsing toolbar would be easy to set up. So we are still working on like different permutations that are possible on different systems, like permutations of views, recycle views, lazy lists. So if you are working with it, please continue to give us feedback on what are the things that you need and what are the things that would be good to be codified in our Compose libraries. So the next thing that we are also expanding is also on lazy layouts. So this lazy layouts is an easy way in Compose to build like kind of list layouts. So now we are expanding the lazy loading elements to more advanced layout like grids and ability to implement your own lazy layout beyond just row, column, and grids. And we also understand like when you are starting to do more development in Compose in this new world, there needs to be more toolings to support all this new stuff. So for Compose, in Android Studio, what we are working on is probably these things are super exciting for a lot of you who have worked in Android a long time and have seen people from the different world having these features and wanting this. So the first one is Live Edit. So Live Edit will enable you to basically edit your code on the go and see the changes directly in your emulator. So Live Edit currently is available in Android Studio Electric Eel. So currently we are at Chipmunk, which is a stable version. So Electric Eel, so Chipmunk is C, Electric Eel is E. So it's like 2 versions up. So Electric Eel is currently in Canary. And another one that is very important for Compose is ability to do a recomposition debugging. So this is a tool for you to really fine-tune your performance for Compose. Because in Compose, since it's a declarative language, what's most important is, in terms of performance, is to check the amount of recomposition that happens. So recomposition debugging is currently available in Android Studio Dolphin, which is currently in beta version. So that's all the big announcement for Compose. Next, we are going to talk about large screens. So these are supports for screens that is basically larger than phones, like things like foldables, tablets, even TVs and desktops. So if sometimes when you think about Android, you just think about the phones. And we see that there is a lot of more demand, and the most growth that happens is actually on our large screen form factors. And there is an increasing need to make sure that your apps is also adaptable to different form factors. So this is where we are putting a lot of investment in building a lot of tools and libraries to support development for large screens as well. Just a quick survey, like how many of you work on or ever work on like large screens applications? What? TV? Yeah? 1%, 2%? TV. Okay, cool. So hopefully, maybe not now, but hopefully this gives you some inspiration of where to go if there is a change in direction in that. So the first thing that we provide is large screen guidelines, which is basically like a set of checklists, quality guidelines of what to do, how to test in terms of to adapt in a good way for large screens. So things like, for example, what is the user pathway journey that you need to test, what sort of combination, whether to use external keyboard or different stylus to test things out. So these are basically guidelines and recommendations how you can improve your apps to adapt for large screens. The second thing that we would really point out as well is with Android 12L. So 12L is a special 12L is a special release where we just focus on improving the experience in large screens. So we focus a lot in improving the experience for users for large screens, whether it's things of improving multitasking, improving interaction between two apps. So we feel that when you are building an app that you want to adapt to different kinds of form factors, it's really important to kind of challenge your assumption that you made in the past about the screen size or orientation changes or user interaction or app lifecycle. So you want to make sure that you make it easy for users to also use it, even though you're using your app with different apps at the same time. This also means like sometimes when you're in multi-window mode, your apps can be used together with other apps, and you might be competing for resources. Like for example, you're competing for the camera resource or microphone resource for that apps. So you need to handle all the different kinds of scenario. Yeah, so basically, in order for us as the team that's supporting Android developers to make sure that you have the best experience in adapting for large screens, we also make different kinds of library to make your life easier. So one of the most important libraries is Jetpack Window Manager, which is the library that supports new device form factors and providing the common API for different device types. So you can get access like things like current media, current window metrics, and maximum window metrics. That's it used to be pretty hard to get that information, or you need to calculate them, calculate those variables yourself. And then now we are providing this as part of a Jetpack library. And another thing is like, probably all of you have done a lot of web, would realize like if you want to make like a responsive layout, you do a lot of breakpoints. And because we in Android, there are so many different devices that we support, it's sometimes like quite difficult to choose what is the right breakpoints and quite confusing to choose those. So to address that, we actually created an opinionated API that will give you basically the exact breakpoints of when you should support from different classes of devices. So we have this thing called window size classes. So it will partition the screen size into 3 different buckets. So one is called compact, which is representing smartphones in portrait. Second, we call it medium, which is representing foldables in tablet and portrait. And the third one is expanded mode, which is representing tablets in landscape and Chrome OS devices. So having this API, it provides you with an opinionated breakpoints. So we would like sometimes you would feel like, oh, does it mean that for every single screens that we have now in the app, we need to decide for 3 different layouts? Like that sounds like to be too much for us to like invest in that much of changes. So what we would recommend is to actually build layout for the compact size and for the expanded size. And if you do not want to invest as much, you can then choose the layout for the medium, depending on the use case, whether to choose the compact layout or the expanded layout. But we would still recommend you to at least have 2 different layouts and supporting the both ends of the screen sizes. So for Compose, the window size APIs is now created under the Material 3 API. And it is like super easy to implement. Basically, it's just you just use the API and basically have like a switch classes to like if this is a compact size, then you do this, or if it's a medium size, and you do you display different layout instead. So this is the case of how you can kind of adopt your application if you are in Compose. But we understand like a lot of you probably are not in Compose and you are still using the different layout, like a view-based layout. So if you are using a view-based layout and you are using things like activities, so we currently, like since 2017, I think, we have really advocated for Android development to use like a single activity, multiple fragments kind of architecture to build apps. But I understand that like a lot of applications still have multiple activities. And now like the question is, how do you want to support multiple activities in a single screen? So in order to do that, we actually have this amazing library that we call activity embedding. So this activity embedding enable you to have like multiple activities in one screen, and it will automatically kind of change and adapt depending on the screen size that you have without you even doing anything. So you just simply use this activity embedding layout, and then put those multiple activities in the layout, and it will adjust according to the screen sizes that you have. So on the other side of it, in the other spectrum, if you don't use multiple activities architecture, but if you are in a single activity multiple fragments, what you can do is use the shading pane layout. So this is basically a layout that would help you optimize for large screen as well. But yeah, so basically the same thing as activity embedding. With fragments, you can put multiple fragments, and the layout itself will kind of figure out what is the screen size at the moment that the user is using, and kind of changes those screen size based on the sizes that have and what sorts of real estate of screens they have, and then change that accordingly. Another thing that we also support, and we will continue to see this more in the future, is multi-app interaction. So multi-app interaction is, and what it translates to for now is, it means like drag and drop. So it would be easier. Actually, this drag and drop is like a drag event itself is something that we have supported in Android since Android 3, but not widely used. But this is something that we see there is a more demand of people who are using multiple apps at the same time and wanting to have that interaction smoother between apps. So we would really make the experience of creating drag and drop events easier through an API in Jetpack library. So there is a Jetpack drag and drop library that just went to stable this year as well. Oh, okay. So this one is something that I'm personally really excited about and use a lot in my own work. So it's resizable emulator. So currently we started with this resizable emulator from Android 12. So if you are working a lot with large screens and or working towards adopting your apps for large screens, you can use resizable emulator in your Android Studio. So instead of like launching like multiple different emulator and then testing in multiple different emulators for different sizes. So this is basically a single emulator that you can just toggle off between phones, tablets, desktop, foldables, depending on what kind of screen size that you want to support. And you can try to see the different layout changes that happen with resizable emulators. Yeah, so we also have a full desktop emulator if you are working on a desktop application as well. Cool. So that's the part about wearables. About large screens. So the last but not least part of new stuff that's coming up for Android this year is on wearables. Can I just also take a quick survey? Like, how many of you are working on wearables? 0? None? 1? Okay, you are my hope, shining hope. So wearables is also something that we've seen a lot of, almost like 3/4 year-on-year growth in terms of how many users coming into Android ecosystems for wearables. Yeah, so we are, the challenge in creating wearables is we want to create also beautiful applications in wearables and make sure that it is performant. Because like comparatively than like a mobile device, like wearables is very small, and you got we really need to optimize for performance in order for your apps to be able to give the best experience for your users. So the point is for us from Jetpack and Android to be able to give you also tools that optimize for those performance and optimize for making your apps still beautiful with the same paradigm that we do in other apps. So that's where the Jetpack Compose for Wear OS come in. So it is currently in beta also, the Jetpack Compose for Wear OS. But it means that we already have all the complete features that is needed to build the app for 1.0 for if you want to build your wearable apps in Compose. And we have added a lot of very backbone features that you need to build apps, things like navigations, scaling lazy layouts, gesture supports, and a lot of other things as well. So for Wearables, currently all the Compose APIs that we have is already compliant with material design, so you don't need to worry in terms of that. And you can also easily follow the design guideline that we also have along the way in the material website as well. So for WebOS, in terms of performance, in terms of design, everything will follow along the same principle with Jetpack Compose in general. But we also recognize the different kind of challenges that different WebOS developer is facing, and we are building a lot of unique components for the optimizing watch experience. So the last thing with WebOS, we also announced this year Android Health Connect by Android. So this is basically like a platform that allow apps, like different apps, not just apps that is owned by Google, but all apps can store health and fitness data on the user's mobile device. And developers can use these health services to collect real-time sensors data without you basically creating those features yourself. And then you can store those data in Health Connect. And that allows the apps to share data with each other. So you don't need to worry about like sharing the health data or collecting those from different devices, but you can use this platform to connect to different apps that uses this health data as well. And it gives you a single on-device data store for your data that might connect to multiple sources. Because a lot of our users who uses apps also, who uses wearables or watches also probably have like multiple Android devices. So it's easier to use this platform to connect and store and share different health data with different devices that they own. So that's it in terms of all the different wide-ranging features. This is basically just probably a 10% of what we announced this year. But I thought this probably would be also an interesting set of features that we have and something that we can discuss and talk about as well. With that, any questions? Yes.
I have 3 questions.
Oh, okay.
Maybe future as well. So the first one is one of the things that iOS have that Android doesn't have yet is the network permission. Can the app, because now by default the app can access to internet. So are there any plan like to implement network permission? So if the apps if the application need to connect to network, it needs to get my permission. So that, for example, I can block Facebook network permission for some time, things like that. So I don't need to put flight mode to block it. I just block per app.
I see.
iOS can do that.
I think, yeah, I know. I think this is, actually, I think currently we do need to put explicitly in Android manifest when we ask for the apps whether they need to connect to the internet or not. But I think you're making a good point that this is something that we need to ask the permission individually per apps as well to preserve like the user's privacy, because this is very important, right? In terms of like whether both in terms of privacy, both in terms of data consumption as well, whether you want the users to use this data for apps as well. So I think definitely this is a good feedback and something we'll consider as well.
Because one of the use cases that I would like to like disable for example, WhatsApp. Like when I'm going somewhere, I want to see email, but I don't want to see WhatsApp message. I just disable the network for the WhatsApp if I have that. Yeah, so that the WhatsApp message can come to me.
that is a very specific use case.
Yeah.
Okay, second question.
The second question is just now you showed the responsive so that you have a library to control the responsive, like medium, compact, medium screen, and large.
Oh yes, Windows size classes.
So it's mostly control the width. Can it also tell me like the landscape, or is this portrait, so that I can create?
So there are two different. Basically, the Windows size classes we have both for the width and for the height. So just now the one that I talked about was for the width, but it also basically tells you the orientation as well. So depending, basically when they know the orientation is like, for example, when this becomes your width, this becomes your height. So it will automatically adjust to that.
Okay. Last one.
Yes.
What is your thoughts on
Ooh.
those because now I know that a lot of developers actually don't build on top of Android, but they build something on top of Android like the Flutter, React Native, and Ionic. Yeah, what is the view on those? Like, are they good practice or what?
Yeah. Okay. I'm an Android DevRel, so I can only say things on technically on technical opinion on Android. I have no feasibility on the plans for other like platforms as well. So what I can say is it really depends on the use case. I think there are merits to developing in in frameworks that allow you to deploy in multi-platforms. It depends on your target market as well. And I think, yeah, I think it depends on the use case. That's, I guess, the answer to that. Okay. I will give you a.
It's okay. I already talked.
Oh, you already, okay. Anyone has any other? Oh, okay. Gentleman with the green shirt. Yes, photo picker.
About the no permission. So in some cases whereby, like when I use some app, then I don't want this app to access my photo library.
Yeah.
So with the no permission, how should I know? How should I disable some app that I doesn't want to give them permission on my photo?
Is it photo picker handle the permission?
Yes.
So app developer don't need to ask for permission, but he asks for photo picker, and photo picker handles the permission.
Yes.
So since I mentioned no permission, meaning that they can just straight away use it, or actually every time they launch the app, the first time they have to ask first, then only the next time only no permission. So what's the difference?
Good question about that.
User is actually seeing the images what they're selecting, so they're giving the permission to select the images at that time. So it cannot directly access the pictures. It can only show the users to pick the pictures. That means user is viewing the images on the screen. That means there's no need of permission. User knows what they're selecting the images.
Yeah.
So I think here's the thing. So when the problem with user permission is when user asks for permission, basically you are giving a blanket permission, right? For example, they are asking like, hey, like I want your media permission, and then the user is like, okay, but I don't know what you are using this for, so I don't know if I'm comfortable in giving you all this permission. So that's where we are moving towards more granular permission as well. That's why we're moving towards like now we are asking you, okay, do you want to just give like photo permission, video permission? And this is where the granularity comes in. So with photo picker, yes, we are not asking the user whether they want like there is an explicit, hey, do you want this app to know your photo? But basically what it says like implicitly when the user say yes, the photo picker system comes up and yes, I want to, for example, upload this photo, this particular photo. What the system is going to give the app is just that specific photo. So the implicitly user is already saying that, okay, I'm okay with just sending or like giving access to this particular photo. I might not be okay with giving the app all my media access. This is where the difference is. And implicitly, it also means the user already give the permission for that particular photo. And then the advantage for developers is they don't need to ask permission and potentially getting rejected for asking those. Sometimes it can be fake, right? Because like vague in terms of like, oh, you don't know what's this permissions for, kind of thing.
Yeah. So my question is like whereby like I'm seeing download the application which actually doesn't just like trigger the the photo pickers.
Yeah.
Actually do some gesture to go and just select everything and upload to the application.
I don't think the system will allow that, like because the photo picker itself is basically a system. It's under a system UI, so the application does not have access at all to select it. Only users can select when the system UI comes up. Gentleman on the white shirt.
Oh, sorry. Hi. I saw that there's the expanded window size class.
Yes.
So does that mean that you Compose supports Android TV and maybe a Leanback library now?
Yeah. I guess. Sorry. What was? Does that mean Android support?
I
And
thought in the
yes.
window sizing
Mhm.
classes,
Mhm.
there's an expanded class.
Yeah.
So I assume that means it's the TV
Mhm.
sizing. So does it mean that the Jetpack Compose supports Android TV and Leanback interface? Because a lot of the Android TV apps uses the Leanback library. So does it mean that Compose supports that?
I'm not that familiar with the Leanback library in particular, but I think it does. So you can, because Compose supports Android, and it means you can also build Android TV apps with Android that uses Compose. Okay, any more questions? The lady at the back. Sorry, I can't hear you.
It's just a simple question, like, does the file picker or will the file picker get access to camera as well, live camera as well? Because you want to pick an image, sometimes people will just take picture on spot.
Oh, like the photo picker.
Yes, you can.
Okay, the question was, will the photo picker get access to camera? Not at the moment, and I don't think there is a plan for that at the moment as well. Yes.
I'm actually quite curious about the health.
Yes.
Because we are actually grabbing the data from Google Health, and then what's the relationship with the health that you show?
So basically, Google Health can store the data in this platform as well, and then you can share the data from those as well.
So let's say if I have another wearable, say Fitbit, so I'm able to sync my Fitbit data into this wearable, and then what? So when developer grab the health data, we can straight grab from this app rather than this Google Health.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
I want to ask regarding the battery. What kind of optimization is there you can do for the battery, and is it limited to the Android with the Google Play or LSP also?
Sorry, the last part, is it limited to battery?
The battery improvements. What kind of battery improvements are there? And then is it limited to Google, the one with Google Play or LSP is included as well?
Or what is included? Google Play?
LSP.
LSP. Okay, so I didn't really talk about the battery actually didn't hit mic, sorry. I didn't really talk about the battery improvement for the talk just now. So one of the big battery improvement is app buckets. Have you heard of that? So basically, this is something that so battery optimization is something that we have had a lot of how do I explain this? So different than our competitor that is a flute logo in Android, basically part of our strength is we have a lot of devices in our market. So Android is an operating system, but it is used by different kinds of devices, different kinds of form that is provided by different OEMs in the market. I'm sorry. And then these different OEMs usually also created a lot of different ways to optimize the devices, right? So that their battery can last longer. Because that is basically one of their competitive advantage, to say like, hey, my phone battery for this model is like 15 hours, and this is like 15 and a half hour, like maybe half an hour more than my competitor, so I can sell more phones. But it also means like in the device level, a lot of times they are modifying the OS to do a lot of different what we call app buckets. So what it does is there is different kinds of performance app buckets depending on the user behavior of the apps. So let's say you have, because not in every single user, you don't use the same kind of apps in the same frequency, right? So there are apps that you are using more frequent, there are apps that you're using less frequent. And usually the strategy is to not allow apps that you're using more frequent to, let's say, do things like running background works or running foreground services or getting notifications to preserve the battery life. Or like, for example, to even at the point of like, if you've never used this app at all, for example, you install some apps and you just forget about it and you haven't used it in 2 years. And sometimes the app developers can just still use a lot of resources even though you are not running the apps. So a lot of different OEMs have the strategy of like, okay, we can kill applications that's never been used by the users. The problem with this is there is a lot of inconsistency with different device manufacturers, because like some device manufacturers can have different standards, and some probably maybe don't optimize their phones at all, for example. So the impact to the users is there is a lot of inconsistency about the performance and the behaviors of the apps itself. Like, it's confusing for both parties, right? For the users, they're like, oh, how come my friend's phone is also Android, but the app behave differently, yeah? And then for the developers also like, oh, how come my phone in this device doesn't work? Like, I don't know why, but probably because like there is some optimization behind the scene that's outside of the OS. So in order for us to kind of standardize those, we created like a single standardized app buckets for Android. And this is basically with coordination with a lot of our OEM partners. And we are making sure that there is a standard different buckets. So there is, I forgot what's the name of the bucket. So there is, like, for example, the normal buckets, then there is a restricted buckets. And when when your app somehow haven't been used in a long time, your apps will go under those restricted buckets. And even you have fine-grained controls as well. You can go to your settings directly and say like, oh, for these apps, I want it to be restricted. So I don't want to get notifications, whatever from these apps. So those are the controls that we are giving from the system itself as well. And with that control, we're also giving a lot of battery optimization by default.